Imagine this. You're the king or queen, sitting on your throne. Everyone loves you and your kingdom is flourishing. Life's good, right? But then, boom, your rival, out of nowhere, tries to take over your throne. What do? Do you go full noble ruler, hope for the best, and trust people to be fair? Or do you pull out the dirty tricks, secretly ruin their reputation, and stay on top? If you picked the second one, congratulations. You're basically a Machiavellian mastermind. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The art of playing dirty, but with style. Now, if you've never heard of Niccolo Machiavelli, don't worry, you're not alone. But if I told you he wrote a book called The Prince, basically the how-to guide for rulers to maintain power, would that ring a bell? This guy's philosophy is the reason we say Machiavellian to describe someone who's crafty, clever, and willing to do anything to stay on top. Yeah, that guy. The one who made power struggles look like a chess game, with no rules. Machiavelli's work is like a mix between your most dramatic office politics and an episode of Game of Thrones, minus the dragons and a little more assassination. If Machiavelli were alive today, I'm pretty sure he'd write a book for surviving office politics called How to Win at Work Without Actually Doing Any Work. And trust me, it'd be a bestseller. Let's rewind a bit. Who the heck was Machiavelli, and why are we still talking about him nearly 500 years later? Here's the scoop. He was a 16th century Italian diplomat who, after losing his job, getting tortured and exiled, thanks Medici family, decided to write The Prince, and it's not exactly the good guy guide for rulers. He basically said, forget about being a nice guy. If you want to stay in power, be ruthless, deceptive, and maybe even betray your best friend. Picture this. Machiavelli gets fired, tortured, and exiled. And instead of sulking, he pulls out his pen, sits down, and writes the ultimate how-to for getting ahead. By any means necessary, no punches pulled. This guy knew how to turn a bad situation into a blueprint for world domination. Classic Machiavelli. Now, the thing you need to understand about Machiavelli is that he wasn't trying to win any popularity contests. He wasn't giving you a warm, fuzzy feeling about how to be a good person. Nope, Machiavelli was all about power. How to get it, how to keep it, and when necessary, how to destroy your enemies without ever touching them. Two of his big concepts, virtù and fortuna. Virtù is all about the power to shake your own destiny. It's the skills, the decisiveness to make things happen, even when everything's falling apart. And fortuna? Well, that's luck, the stuff you can't control. But here's the twist. Machiavelli didn't want you to just sit back and hope for luck. Oh no, he said, create your own luck. Let's talk about one of Machiavelli's most famous quotes. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. I know, it sounds like the tagline for the next action movie, right? But Machiavelli wasn't saying, be a villain and punish everyone you meet. He was all about making sure your authority is respected. Because if people fear you, they'll think twice before crossing you. Now here's where it gets really fun. How do you get ahead, Machiavelli style? Well, Machiavelli says you need to be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents strength, power, and a show of force, but the fox? The fox is all about strategy, being sly, and outsmarting your rivals. Think of it like winning Monopoly. Pretend you're nice, but secretly hoard the hotels when no one's looking. But Machiavelli wasn't just about causing chaos for the sake of it. He was realistic. He understood that you can't just hope for the best in politics or leadership. You need strategy, brains, and sometimes, yeah, a bit of ruthlessness. If you want to lead, you can't always be the nice guy. Sometimes you have to make tough calls, and that's just part of the game. So, is Machiavelli the ultimate villain? Or just a misunderstood genius who is really good at understanding how power works? I'll leave that up to you, but stay tuned, because we're about to dive even deeper into his powerful ideas and how they could change the way you look at leadership, politics, and your everyday life. In the next section, we're going to talk about why Machiavelli's ideas are still being used today by politicians, CEOs, and maybe even your neighbor who's always too busy to help you move your couch. Stay tuned, we've only scratched the surface. All right, you've got the basics down, but let's go a little deeper. What exactly made Machiavelli's ideas so revolutionary, and why did they cause such a stir in political thought? Well, the man wasn't just out here trying to write some basic how-to book for rulers. No, he was challenging centuries of idealistic philosophy with something far more practical. This isn't your grandma's advice on leadership. Imagine this. The political landscape of Europe back then was full of kings, princes, and popes all fighting for control. And what did Machiavelli say? Forget being nice. You want to stay in charge? You better be prepared to get your hands dirty. Welcome to Machiavellian politics. Remember when we talked about Machiavelli's famous idea, it is better to be feared than loved? Well, this is the heart of it. Let's break it down. People are unreliable. They'll praise you one day and turn their back the next. But fear? Fear sticks. You don't have to terrorize everyone. But establishing authority through a bit of fear is what keeps the masses in check. It's like when your boss makes an example out of someone to show you how serious things are. It's not fun, but you know the line. You cross it, you feel the power. Now let's talk about a concept that's more Machiavellian than a 16th century palace intrigue, political realism. Machiavelli was one of the first to really challenge the idea that leaders should be moral. You know, the whole do good, be good philosophy. No, he said, look, morality's fine and all, but when you're leading a country, it's not about being good, it's about being effective. And honestly, when you think about it, he wasn't wrong. If you're trying to lead a nation, keeping everyone happy all the time isn't practical. Some tough decisions need to be made. Machiavelli wasn't just some armchair philosopher. He was a diplomat, constantly seeing how the game of power played out in the real world. When the Medici family tossed him out, he didn't sulk. Instead, he wrote a survival guide for rulers based on all the shady stuff he had witnessed. He understood that the world wasn't just about following laws, it was about controlling what you can. And when he saw that power was being abused by the rich and powerful, he decided to take a different approach. That's what makes Machiavelli so interesting. He wasn't playing for anyone's approval, he was playing to win. Now, the thing you need to understand about Machiavelli is that he wasn't trying to win any popularity contests. He wasn't giving you a warm, fuzzy feeling about how to be a good person. Nope, Machiavelli was all about power. How to get it, how to keep it, and when necessary, how to destroy your enemies without ever touching them. He was clear. If you want to lead, don't expect roses and applause. Sometimes, you've got to be willing to sacrifice a bit of your kindness to stay in control. So what's this for-to business really about? It's the skill to make things happen when everyone else is hesitating. It's that natural knack for taking advantage of a situation and being quick on your feet. You see an opportunity, you take it, even if it means bending a few rules. It's like when you step up at work, take on that extra project, and everyone starts applauding you. But you know you're really just positioning yourself for the next promotion. That's for-to. You didn't just sit there waiting for your boss to notice. No, you made it happen. Then there's fortuna, the unpredictable luck factor. You can have all the virtue in the world, but sometimes things just don't go your way. And Machiavelli knew that. No one's completely immune to fate. But here's the catch. You don't sit around waiting for luck to find you. You make your own luck, using your virtue to position yourself when that lucky break comes. Let's go back to his core idea. The ends justify the means. This one's tricky. It's the part of Machiavelli's philosophy that gets him branded as the ultimate villain. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean any ends, just the right ends. Ones that benefit the greater good of the state or leadership. So what does that mean? Well, you might have to be a little underhanded to stay in power, but that doesn't mean you should do it for personal gain. It's all about the big picture, the state, the country, the people. That's what Machiavelli was all about. So, is Machiavelli advocating for a free-for-all where anything goes? Well, not exactly. He wasn't suggesting every ruler should go full tyrant. But what he was suggesting is that rulers can't afford to be naive. The game of politics is tough, and if you play by traditional moral standards alone, you'll get steamrolled. Sometimes you need to make those tough calls, and that means getting your hands dirty in the name of power, stability, and the greater good. Now you might be wondering, what does this look like today? Well, Machiavelli's ideas are still relevant in politics, business, and yes, even in social media. Imagine Machiavelli advising politicians today. teaching them how to make sure their rivals self-destruct with a well-timed tweet. Machiavelli would have had a blast with Twitter. #strategic tweets. But let's get real for a second. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for pure chaos or destruction. What he was all about was understanding power, the tools of power, how to use them wisely, and most importantly, how to stay in control when the stakes are high. He wasn't playing the villain, he was just playing the game, and playing it better than most. So, is Machiavelli the ultimate villain? Or just a misunderstood genius who was really good at understanding how power works? Well, that's for you to decide. But one thing's for sure, whether you love him or hate him, Machiavelli changed the way we think about power, leadership, and how far you need to go to stay on top. Imagine this, you're a leader and everything's going perfectly. We've got followers, you've got power, and then, bam, your rival shows up, ready to steal your throne. What do? Do you play fair, hope for the best, and trust people to just be nice? Or do you secretly poison their reputation, manipulate them into doing what you want, and make sure you stay on top? Pauses for effect. If you guessed the second one, congratulations, you're practically a Machiavellian genius. But what if I told you this is exactly the kind of advice that made Niccolò Machiavelli the most controversial political thinker of all time? He wrote The Prince, a handbook that makes Game of Thrones look like a kindergarten playdate. Let's be real for a second. How many of us have had that one colleague who's always trying to outsmart you, steal your lunch, or get the promotion you deserve? If Machiavelli had a handbook for surviving office politics, I'm pretty sure it'd be called How to Win at Work Without Actually Doing Any Work, and trust me, it'd be a bestseller. But here's the catch. Machiavelli's ideas didn't just stop at office politics. They go way deeper. We're talking about life and death, wars, betrayal, and, well, everything you need to be a successful ruler. In today's video, we're diving into the mind of Machiavelli, the man who taught us that sometimes being nice is overrated, and that power is a game where rules are meant to be bent, twisted, and maybe even broken. But wait, before you think I'm just advocating for backstabbing your way through life like some villain out of a James Bond movie, let's set the stage. Who the heck was Machiavelli? And why are we still talking about him almost 500 years later? Machiavelli was a 16th-century Italian diplomat who, let's just say, got on the wrong side of a few powerful people and got kicked to the curb. He didn't sit around whining about it. Oh no. He wrote a book, The Prince, that basically says, forget about being a nice guy. If you want to stay in power, you've got to play dirty. Really, really dirty. Picture this. He gets fired from his government job, tortured and exiled by the Medici family. And instead of writing sad poetry about it, he comes up with a blueprint for how to succeed, by any means necessary. This guy didn't hold back. He gave advice to rulers, kings, and princes, and some of it's so brutal, you might wonder if he was planning to be a supervillain in his next life. So what's the big idea behind all this? Well, Machiavelli wasn't really the kind of philosopher who gave you warm, fuzzy thoughts about love and happiness. Oh no. He was all about power, how to get it, how to keep it, and if you need to, how to destroy your enemies without ever physically touching them. I'm talking about politics so cold it makes a freezer look like a hot tub. He breaks it down into two big ideas, virtù and fortuna. Virtù is your ability to shape your destiny, take charge, and control the situation. It's all about the skills, the savvy, and the decisiveness to make things happen, even when it seems like everything's going wrong. But here's the kicker. Machiavelli didn't think you should just hope for good luck. No. He said you should create your own luck. And how do you do that? By using your virtù to shape the world around you, outsmarting the system, and doing what others are too squeaky clean to do. One of the most famous quotes from Machiavelli goes like this: "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Okay, I know. It sounds like the tagline for a really intense action movie, but hear me out. Machiavelli wasn't saying, be a tyrant and punish everyone you meet. He was saying that, when it comes to ruling, people are fickle. They'll love you one day and turn on you the next. But fear? Fear can keep people in line. Fear works. Let's be real. If you've ever watched a scary boss fire someone in front of a crowd to make a point, you know exactly what I mean. Fear is a tool in the toolbox. Okay, now let's dive into the juicy part. How do you get ahead, Machiavelli style? What are the tactics? Is it just about being the office villain? Well, yes and no. Machiavelli says you should be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents strength and power, but the fox? The fox is all about cunning, slyness, and outsmarting your rivals. Machiavelli believed you need both to survive in a ruthless world.